is what you cannot live without, and its emissions are what we cannot live with. So this is the story of steel in short, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you, and thanks a lot to ET for giving me this opportunity for this interaction. The very material that builds our cities, infrastructures, industries, the material which has the power to transform our future is at crossroads and is entangled in the greatest challenges of our time. Steel is responsible for 8% of the total global emissions, and that is 12% in India. It is as if every bridge, every building, every car made of steel carries not only its weight in metal, but also its weight in climate burden. The steel is the most carbon-emitting industrial sector, and it is rightly called hard-to-abate sector because carbon is very intrinsic to the process of iron and steel making, serving both its chemistry as well as energy needs. In India, currently, we are emitting about 2.54 tons of CO2 per ton of crude steel, and the world average is 1.91. We have a long path to go. But at this juncture, can we answer this question? Can this most carbon-intensive industry be transformed rapidly enough to reach our climate commitments while keeping us on track of our ambitious economic growth? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to disappoint you. The answer is no, and I'm not going to talk about the strategies on rapid reduction of the carbon emissions of steel sector. This process is very complex. It involves technological challenges, financial challenges, structural challenges, and needs to be built up slowly. There's no silver bullet, no one solution to the answer. But we are committed. What I can ensure is that yes, we are slated for a rapid expansion of steel sector. We are the second largest steel producing country, and we are currently at 170 million ton of production and are going to reach 300 million ton in 2030. But we are committed that will grow sustainably and responsibly, and this commitment has already been shown by Ministry of Steel as we have released a report on greening steel sector in India, which shows the strategy, roadmap, and action plan for decarbonization of steel sector. What we plan is that to take up incremental emission reduction in the steel sector with the current available landscape of technologies, and then to ambitiously reach towards our 2070 net zero goals. We are at 2.54, and we plan to reach to 2.2 of emission intensity by 2030. And for this, the road is not easy, definitely, but the right mix of technological interventions, financial infusion, and policy levers can definitely accelerate this transition. Just to give you a little background of the steel sector, the technology mix, our 50% of our steel is produced through blast furnace route, which is very coal intensive and hence contributes to the major emission. 23% is through coal-based DRI, again based on thermal coal and even more carbon intensive than blast furnace route. 6%, only 6% is through gas-based DRI, which has a carbon emission intensity of less than 50% of the other two process routes. And 21% is through scrap-based route. Scrap steel is highly recyclable, so scrap holds a lot of promise because it brings down emission intensity to almost 0.5 tons of CO2 per ton of crude steel. So here in this technology mix lies our challenge because we are so heavily dependent on coal. But again, in this mix only lies our solutions, because what we have to do is move from coal towards the alternate fuels. We already had seen how Gujarat is moving ahead in renewable energy, and GAIL, of course, can provide us natural gas. So yes, we cannot, for the sake of economy, right now just stop using coal. We have to transition slowly, but very intelligently. So if we talk about the whole roadmap and how we are strategizing our move towards net zero, we can divide it into three phases. If you look at short term, 2030, the low-hanging fruits are energy efficiency and renewable energy. So this is energy efficiency is one of the biggest lever which can help us reduce our emissions by more than 12%. Because right now, India's average SEC, that is specific energy consumption, is about 6.5 to 7, while the world average is about 4.5. So we have a long way to go. Just using energy efficiency techniques, which may not only bring down the carbon emissions, but also reduce the cost of steel production, is a very, very promising step right now, and that is what we are trying to enhance in the steel sector. But the challenge lies in the capex. Initial funding is a main issue for moving towards the adoption of BAT's, best available technologies. Second lever, renewable energy. We had heard a lot from Mr. Arun how Gujarat is moving ahead, and yes, that is what we need. Only 7% of our electricity consumed in the steel sector is green right now. We are sorry to hear this number, and we have to increase the penetration. If we increase the penetration to, let's say, 50%, we can bring down our emissions again by 10-12%. So these are, and you know, in these two levers, we are not waiting for a new technology development. Technology is there. It's just the matter of finances and the ecosystem. So these are the promising areas where we are working. Another thing is circular economy. How can we use more and more scrap in our steel making? Currently, we are using 21% of scrap in steel making, while the world average is 31%, and in countries like US, it's 65%. So that's why their emission is so much lower than ours. So we are also trying how to improve the scrap recyclability and scrap availability in our economy. So moving ahead, if we look for a little longer horizon from 2030 to 2047, here comes green hydrogen. I'm sure you must be waiting to hear about that. Green hydrogen has a transformative power for the steel sector because it can absolutely, totally replace carbon, both for its reduction needs, that is the chemical need, and for the energy need. So when we produce steel using carbon, we emit CO2. When we produce steel using hydrogen, green hydrogen, we just emit H2O. Such a nice thing to see. And I have been to a hybrid plant in Sweden where they are piloting this, and it was so heartening to see that their chimneys are just emitting water vapor. This is what we hope for. And yes, there's a lot of promise which lies here. A blast furnace route, we can reduce up to 15% of carbon emissions using green hydrogen in blast furnace route. We can reduce up to 25% of carbon emissions in gas-based DRI route using blending, and we can go up till near zero, almost 100% reduction in carbon emissions using 100% based DRI. However, what the challenge is the cost. It has already been touched upon by Mr. Ayush. Right now, the cost is at $5 to $6 per kg of hydrogen, while industry says it needs it at $1 to $1.5 per kg for the production to be viable. So we are still waiting. However, till 2030, we are working on pilots. Ministry of Steel is taking up 3 pilots in the 3 technology areas which I just mentioned about with the help of MNRE. And we hope that by 2030, when the cost of hydrogen comes down, we will be able to gear up our consumption of green hydrogen. Next, very important deep decarbonization lever is CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Ladies and gentlemen, with the kind of legacy capacity we have of blast furnace, which has an average life of 40 years, and which is totally based on coal, we can only go down the path of reducing the coal emission only by 50% using different means. The rest 50% of emission can be abated in blast furnace route only through CCUS. That is the promise CCUS holds for us when we have a huge capacity of blast furnace and which is still adding on. So this holds a lot of promise. However, again, the cost of CCUS is prohibitive. Carbon capture cost is still under control, but the cost of carbon utilization is way too high for any company to viably use this option. Also, if we talk about the storage, in India, we have only mapped the potential of carbon storage in various coal fields and various underground options. However, it has not been rationalized yet, and we still have a long way to go. However, Niti Aayog and Ministry of Power are coming up together, planning to come up with a mission on CCUS, which can show us a path in future. So we are very hopeful that beyond 2030, we'll be able to use CCUS for the reduction. Then another lever is biochar. That's again very promising because it's considered a renewable resource, and it can affect every single component of our value chain of steel production, right? For sinter making, pellet making, coke making, replacement of PCI in blast furnace, replacement of coal, thermal coal in DRI, even used in electric arc furnaces, we can bring down emission just by using biochar. However, again, the problem lies in the ecosystem. Do we have enough biomass available with us for a sustainable usage in the steel industry? How can we convert all that biomass into biochar, and who is going to do that, and where do we get all that money from? And still biomass, the biochar, is coming at a higher premium than the coke. So we still have to answer those questions before we can move on to this. Then if we look at beyond 2047, what we see is the promises in alternative technologies for steel making, some disruptive technologies like molten oxide electrolysis, electromining, etc. But they are yet to come. We cannot say for sure what's going to happen because they are still at low TRL level now. So these are the technology levers. However, for the producers to supply, to produce steel using these different technology options, there has to be a constant support from the government with the policy framework. So for that, Ministry of Steel is again committed to push demand of greener steel in the society. First of all, we are working on defining what is green steel. We don't know yet, and no one in the world has yet defined what is green steel. What exactly carbon emissions associated with the steel can be categorized as green steel. So we are working on taxonomy, which can clearly help us differentiate between a greener product and a grayer product. Then comes the importance of demand generation. Ministry of Steel is also committed to work on a policy called Green Public Procurement Policy, where we see that even if we mandate a small amount of steel to be consumed in the steel sector as a green steel, that can make a huge difference. And as far as the cost, we have worked out that if the green steel comes at a premium of, let's say, 30%, and if we mandate only 20% of the total steel to be used in the steel sector as green, then the whole infrastructure cost, budget cost will increase by only 1.1% on the government. So that's encouraging. However, this 1.1% is a huge number for a country like India. So, but however, we are also looking the ways how to promote this demand of green steel in the private sector, especially in the automobile sector, which are also worried about their scope 3 emissions, and steel contributes to the scope 3 emissions for automobiles. So this is in a nutshell what we are thinking about, what our strategy is for moving towards our net zero 2070 net zero targets. And I'm sure that if we stay consistent on this path, if we do enough planning, and if we have collaborations with the international organizations regarding technology sharing and co-development, we'll be able to achieve our goal. But it's just the vision and the ambition are not going to lead us towards fruition. We need action, and action now. With that, I'd like to end my note here, and thank you everyone, and wishing you a very safer, brighter and cleaner future. Thank you.
Thank you.